Okay, I think we'll make a start. So I'm delighted to introduce Miles Weaver. Many of you will know Miles for his chairing, facilitating the annual Grand Challenges workshop as part of the Making an Impact stream at the OR conference. Today, Miles is going to talk through the Get On Board program that he has been successfully running in Scotland, which is intended to empower people to make a difference as trustees on charity boards. Hence, today's event is intended to encourage and support OR society members to utilise their OR analytic skills through volunteering as charity board trustees. And the session aims to help you determine what you can bring to a board and what impact you can make. This is all part of the OR and the third sector's objective to increase the support that the OR community provides to the third sector, to add to existing long-standing support, provided most notably through the OR Society's pro bono scheme. In his day job, Miles is an associate professor and his job title is not as bad as professor of seashell selling on seashores. He is assistant professor in systemic sustainability and supply chain management. Yes, I think I managed to get that. And that's at Edinburgh Napier University Business School. Miles has a PhD and first class honours degree from Aston Business School. So, Miles, over to you.
Thank you, Malcolm. You found out some things I forgot all about. So, good afternoon, everybody. It's nice to talk to you, and many friends that I see the names of from conferences. So, I'm hoping not to talk at you today about this subject, but to have a discussion. That's what I really would like to have. I'd like to have a really good discussion. And there will be different levels of experience in the room. Like I can see a photograph, a video of someone with an OBE in all this stuff. Ruth is in the corner for me, and bring in the wealth of the room, and other people will be thinking about maybe getting on a board. Now, my story began as a brummie in Birmingham. Well, always started as a brummie in Birmingham, I suppose. And about 15 years ago, we launched a Get On Board program in Birmingham and set up a charity called the Birmingham Leadership Foundation. I won't explain why, but it was around the riots that happened at that time, and the city council gave us some funding. And then I moved to Edinburgh, and I said to my dean, "Can we do this here? Can I bring this program here?" And we created the UK's first Get On Board for Students course. And in Birmingham, it was mainly around young people and women on boards. So we did. 10 or so years later, we now have an executive education course called Leadership and Board Governance, where CEOs of senior managers of businesses and third sector leaders and governance practitioners come on a course, and they might be interested in getting on boards or brushing up their skills in governance and going on another board, perhaps, and continuing the Get On Board program. And this program was picked up by RSM and Santander, Inspire in Scotland, and spread out to 7 universities across Scotland. So I'm very proud of that. However, in COVID, it became one of these COVID casualties. So I'm very, very keen to bring it back to life. But our executive education program is oversubscribed and is very successful. So I'm just here to spend 45 minutes having a chat about getting on board, what you can bring to a board, and maybe some of those OR skills would be useful to boards around the country too. And my challenge to Karen and others is to support as many individuals in the OR society to get on boards. So to increase our reach through having our fingers in the pies of many, many charities and helping them with better decision making. I often say, if you want to do a better type of MBA, go and get on a board, and you'll soon learn how difficult it is to run a charity. We don't talk about profit; we talk about surpluses and keep going. Is pretty difficult, as I'm sure Ruth and others will be able to testify to when we have a chat. So that's what we're doing. So hopefully there will be some people in the room who've never thought about being a charity trustee. There'll be people who have done it many, many times, and hopefully you can talk and bring that to the room. Just to get the ball rolling, does anyone know what the average age of a trustee is? Go on, Ruth.
I don't know. I would guess it's about 61.
Oh, okay. Anyone higher or lower than Ruth? Anyone higher or lower? Anyone said in the chat?
Maybe 55.
I'd go higher.
You'd go higher than Ruth?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the
Near
answer,
70, I'd say.
the Charity Commission, England and Wales, said it's 57.
Really.
57. That's why I've got a picture coming up in a minute of Heinz baked beans, the beans variety. The average age of 57. And then they got clever with the calculation and did it again about 6 years ago, and it came out at 62. So I've always made it my mission the last 10 years to get the age of trusteeship down from 57 to 55, 54. Everything's good. But no, it's gone up. Okay, and you can have a discussion about ratio of women and male and things like that. So people don't like this saying anymore, most certainly. But our boards are most certainly male, pale, and stale, as you'd often see people talk about in the past. So one of my ambitions is get more young people onto boards. Why can't an 18-year-old get onto a board and represent the NHS or whatever it might be? And that's what we've been doing in the university through our student body. Doing that and outreach. Okay, so there you are. I'm going to stick with 57 because I think it's a nice number. Depends how you count it. So in the chat, I have put a link to a mural board. So I'm not going to do a presentation per se, a PowerPoint presentation. If you can come into my mural board, I have got a map there. If you can come in, you should be able to see it. Anyone come in yet? And could you pick up a post-it note and write your name on it and plonk it where you are? And I will do the same because I'm actually in Worcestershire at the moment. Okay, here comes Sarah. There you are. Oh, we have got someone from Scotland. Oh, look. Okay. So a few people from Scotland. So you might want to join our leadership and board governance course. We've got someone from London. So keep adding them. And while you're doing that, can I ask the question, does anybody have any experience of being on a charity board in the room? So Ruth? Andrew does? Yeah? Anybody else? And who's never thought about it? Oh, John does? Okay. And who's thinking about it? Thinking about what value you can add? You could put. That's John still putting his thumb up again. So Ruth, what was your first ever trustee position? Oh, you're on mute. Oh,
I can't do the board and the mic at the same time. I haven't managed to do the board at all, actually. My first charity position was after I'd taken early retirement, so I was 55. So trying to help with your averages, but still pretty old. On a board for a small local charity for women affected by domestic violence, provided counselling services in bits of London for women affected by domestic violence.
Brilliant. Oh, anything current?
Current? Do you really want to know? I've got several.
Yeah, you've probably got a list, haven't you?
I'm on board of the Science Council. I'm on the board of Humanists UK. I am chair of the board of a small charity called CHIRP, a confidential human factors incident reporting program. And I'm on the board of the Academy for the Mathematical Sciences.
Wow, and you were on the board of the OR Society and our president.
I was, yeah.
Okay, so Yes. So these are trustees as well, aren't they? Charity. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's an easy one if you want to, charity trustee position. Go on the board of the OR Society. Andrew, what about yourself? Oh, you're not unmuted, Andrew.
Okay, I've been getting in a mess with the screen in front of me, but I've been a trustee or well, of a charity or a voluntary organisation on quite a number of occasions over the last 20 years. The first one was, I mean, it didn't really get anywhere. It was a startup charity trying to set up some supported housing for people with learning disabilities in Lambeth. I was an enthusiast who I joined to try and help raise some money for that, but that in the end didn't come to anything, although I suppose it did some work in promoting the issue. Then I was part of a board of a cooperative that was running, well, it was a domiciliary care cooperative trying to enable the people receiving care to be managing the organisation, and that ran for I think it was 12 in the end. We closed it in about 2018. And well, currently I'm a trustee of a charity that's raising money for hospital nursing school in Uganda, where I worked for 12 years, and also Health Watch Lambeth. And in a sense, I'm a kind of trustee of I'm part of a board of people that are in the process of setting up a university in remote rural Uganda. It's not strictly a charity because it's a Ugandan organization, but everybody's working voluntarily together to try and make this happen.
Fantastic. And what about you, John?
I've been on a board of trustees of a local nature reserve for about 20 years, bringing the average age down somewhat. And then more recently, 3 years as a school governor, which has largely the same responsibilities.
Of course. Great. I think that it's just beautiful just listening to these, the experiences that you've got and what you've given back. And it says a lot about you, doesn't it? It says a lot about your interests and what you do. So for everybody else in the room, look at the inspiration in the room, and these are the differences that you can make too. Okay, so good. So here's some very high level, board level experience. And to those who haven't got any, don't be discouraged, because Ruth started when she was 55. That's right, you said 55. So make a start when you're ready, and make sure it's where your passion lies. Okay, so moving on then. So as I said, we have done this program now in Scotland for over 10 years. We've been awarded lots of stuff for the impact that we've done. And as John said, there are many. I did it like this so it'd be more like a conversation rather than PowerPoint. There could be many types of ways of being a governance leader. And as John said, he has been a governor of a school. So you might think, look at that list here. We're mainly going to talk about trusteeship here, but you may have done some of this stuff already. And for the wisdom in the room, just to think about it, what does a board do? And here are some things that we generally talk about on our course, being the mind and the will of the company, where strategy is set, where capital is allocated, where we talk about risk and governance, which we'll come back to. It's setting the tone for the organization and its culture, the leadership, and being ambassadors for the organization. Would anyone like to add to that with those with board level experience? No? So what we're going to talk about today then is what knowledge and skills and mindset can you bring? And if we've got time, it'd be nice to talk about how this mix of knowledge, skills, and mindset adds to the diversity of thought in the boardroom. And one of the things that people have really, really enjoyed from the students that they've taken on from the university is their ability to have constructive challenge in the boardroom, questioning the status quo. And that has been really, really, really useful. And I put here a little point here because people often disagree with this one. But control the minutes, control the meeting. If you're asked to do the minutes, I never say no. I never say no because it gives you an influence over the meeting, how it's reported, and it's quite a big responsibility. So I've always enjoyed minute taking, writing agendas, and all that. And if we had much more time, it would be wonderful to have a conversation around the different board behaviours that we might see in the boardroom. But I suppose we've had enough of that if we look at the White House last week, I suppose. So I'm an academic, so I've come up with 4 Gs for getting on board. And this works very well with the students, might not necessarily work so well with people in the room here. But
Mike, can I just ask you a quick question, taking a step back?
Sure.
I hope I didn't miss this. You looked at the kinds of responsibilities board members have a couple of slides back.
Yeah.
What powers do boards have to actually make any of their conclusions take effect?
Well, that's a big question. So I wasn't pitching, in so much detail today, on the effect of boards. But maybe John or Andrew or Ruth might want to answer that question.
In law, a charity board is responsible for the charity. So in law, there are a number of duties for trustees, and the trustees ultimately, what you want is a good executive. If you've got staff, you want a good executive who will be working alongside and who will be delivering everything that needs to be done. But ultimately, the board has the power of hiring and firing the executive. The board has the power to direct them. So they have all the power in law. In practice, it's a lot harder because the board of volunteers, if you've got staff, the board of volunteers and the staff are there most of the time. And so the staff are really on top of things. And the board shouldn't be looking in detail and rethinking everything that the staff are doing. So it's much more like the power that you might have over, if you're a manager, over staff to whom you've delegated work, is you're trusting them to do the right thing and to report to you appropriately. But you've got to balance keeping them on board, you've got to balance keeping them enthused and keeping them motivated against what you're wanting them to do, which is why that theme of constructive challenge is really so important. Does that start?
Yeah, absolutely. That's brilliant, Ruth. Thank you very much.
I think I'd add to that it varies hugely across the different charitable organizations and other voluntary organizations. And so the extent to which there are employees is very variable. In some cases, there aren't any. And so the trustees are the whole thing. And in another variable is the powers are effectively set out in the organization's founding document, and they can involve trading, other things that are relatively risky. In other cases, it may be not. So the power to affect things and cause trouble is very variable, but it can be very significant.
So I always remind me of the first student we got onto a board. It was to the Voluntary Action Fund in Scotland. and they distribute £23 million of funding. And he put his hand up. He wanted to be the chair of one of the distributing committees. So he was involved in the 16 million grant, and he was chairing the meetings for that. So he thought that was an amazing experience in terms of the level of responsibility that he held. But as Ruth mentioned, and Andrew alluded to as well, that challenge is really important. Just take Kids Company, which is the textbook example of a charity that didn't go very well. And I know this is being recorded, and we are in the world that we are at this week. But I very much would not want to be a trustee of a charity that's is a recipient of international aid at the moment. I really wouldn't want to be one of those trustees. Okay, so very difficult times for many boards around all. Probably Ruth will come in on that point.
I just want to say, as this is being recorded, that the Kids Company trustees were completely exonerated by a judge after review. So I think it's worth knowing that. It's still a very, very uncomfortable position they were in. So as you say, I agree with you on it can be very difficult being a trustee. There are big issues that can come up, and of course we all hope that we've got it under control. That's our job, to keep it under control. That's what governance is. But it's not always, because we're always taking risks, and sometimes those risks, they seem safe when you take them, otherwise you wouldn't take them, but they are risks, and sometimes the small probabilities actually still turn into something.
Sure. Okay, so that's a good little bit of a deep dive there. So we're going to have a breakout in a moment, and we'll pick up on those or whatever people want to talk about. But I wanted to focus a little bit first in those who have not considered being a trustee and why you might go about doing it. So these 4 G's are about giving back, growing, feeling great, and getting ahead. So first of all, what are you passionate about? And you've just learned from 3 people in the room what they're passionate about. Here is a list, and you might want to put a star. There's not many people in this conversation, but you might want to put a star. What are you passionate about? What type of board might you be interested in and may wish to follow? So there's a star going then on the arts, and one going on animals. And we could think about, in your locality or across the UK, what types of charities, third sector organisations are doing the things that you're passionate about, and then you can leverage the skills that you have there. So giving back, this is what I want to spend most of our time on, and this is my question really for our next 20 minutes or so. What can I bring to a board? What can I bring? What is the knowledge, the skills, the experience? I've added there connections. Social capital is extremely important. And if we have more time and on our course, before we get into the detail of what governance is and get into all these different case studies, we would take a skills audit. So yes, Ruth and Andrew and others, when you joined these boards, were you asked to do a skills audit?
I go first again.
Go
on. I get regularly asked to do a skills audit each year by the charities that I'm on the board of, but the first thing was a simple application form. So it was the normal CV and cover letter, where they said what they were after in the adverts or whatever, and I said what they were. So that was the point at which I was setting out what I had for them, and then the skills audit is done regularly, just to make sure that the board as a whole has got the skills that are needed and decide what to do if they're not there. Is that the same for Andrew and John?
Strictly no, but it was partly to do with the way I got involved. In 2 cases, I was part of the formation of the organisation. In others, I'd already got involved giving them some pro bono support, and then they asked me if I'd like to be a member of the board. So there wasn't sort of a presentation of skills at the outset. But also, I can't recall us doing a skills audit at any time in those that I've been part of formally. I guess there's been discussions about what we lack under concern about how we might deal with that.
Anybody else? Okay, so one of the first things that you should expect to be asked to do is a skills audit, or you can do one yourself. The link is in the board here. The Reach volunteering one is very, very good. If you go onto my governance toolbox course, there's one that we've created at Napier, but the Reach volunteering one has been updated quite a lot recently, and it's very, very good. So if we look at the IOD, so IOD, not necessarily for charity trustees, they have a competency framework for leaders on boards, knowledge, skills, and mindset. So these are some of the things that you may wish to consider that you may have. And of course, we don't want, not everybody on the board can bring everything. So we want to see that diversity of thought in the boardroom and bring different levels, different types of knowledge, skills, and mindset to the board, and make sure that we're filling these gaps. So a board that I involved with or take notice of is Hostel in Scotland. They're always recruiting for new board members, and they're very specific in terms of what they're asking based on their skills audit. But in many people's experiences, they're not necessarily asked to do a skills audit. When I've asked people who have gone through our course, they haven't been asked to do a skills audit. It would take you 20 or so minutes to do it. Some are better than others in terms of how they rate your skills. But here you can learn about what you can bring. So I'm going to suggest we go into a breakout group now for 10 minutes and ask the question, what do you bring to the board in terms of knowledge, skills, mindset, and connections? Would everyone be okay with that? What could you bring to a board? Where does your passion lie? What can you offer? And for those with experience, there might be people in the room who will say, I haven't done much of this. Then some words of encouragement and vice versa. Okay, so if we can go into a few breakout groups then, Karen, what can I bring to a board? And if we had more time, we'd do the skills audit and we'd go into some detail here, but this is just to get a flavour of, what can you bring? Okay, should go for 10 minutes. So Karen's going to do some magic. Invite you to a group. Everyone should be back. Is everyone back? There we are. We've got a little echo. Okay then. So there were some really interesting conversations, I'm sure, there, and different levels of experience, and some without any. Would anyone like to offer up what they might bring to a board, where their passions might lie? Maybe you might have an idea of where you might want to make your impact. Who wants to start? Would anyone? I heard a couple of really good conversations. Brilliant. Would anyone like to offer up what you talked about? Nobody?
Can I just say,
Yeah.
If you are on a board and you are invited to say something, the worst thing for a chair on a board is that none of the trustees have got a view. So I think just being able to help out the chair is quite a useful thing to do. So
Thank you, Ruth.
and it's also nice for a speaker, but
Mhm.
and it is, in smaller groups, it was clear that people had something to say. It's just
Great
everybody's being too polite.
Yeah, they are. They are. Yeah, and never be put off by the fact that some people have been on many, many boards. You make a start where you make a start, and at any time. What I learned from the students is we got a lot of criticism from our third sector friends. You've trained up 20 students on a Get On Board course. It was a 4-day course, went into a lot of detail. Great, fantastic, love the idea of what you've done. Don't just plonk them like placement students onto us. So I've always said to our students, when the opportunity comes up and it's the right passion and right level for you, then you do it then. So we've took it on board that most of our students might go back to India or something, and they might go and help run the residents association, and that's great. And let us know how you got on, and not necessarily put people onto board straight away. Make sure they make an impact, and then it endures. It endures. So when it's right for you is really important. So that's why I asked the question about passion. Now, to get some, and that's why I put a question here about what matters to you. But we'll what I want to move on to now, and some of these things that have already come up, and this has come from Women on Boards, a charity itself, but they're not necessarily just for females. And these are some of the reasons why you might consider being a board member. And if you want to talk to any of these, then please do. So as we saw the first 3 or 4 people, you can see their level of interest, their engagement in their community. Do you know what? These are the guys I want to hang around with. It's really, really fascinating to hear these stories, to build knowledge and new networks. And a lot of people that we have trained, so we've trained 350 people in governance over the last 10 years, maybe a little bit more than that. And some of them have got their next job from it. So someone came on I mentioned the charity, the Voluntary Action Fund in Scotland, and that person went and worked for them. And they were working for Scottish Water, never thought about going to work for a grant maker. And then they ended up resigning from being on the board of this grant maker to being an employee of it. So it opened up a complete new world for them. So it does build new industry knowledge and could be your next client or your new job. Certainly, and I'm wondering if anyone wants to talk to this one, the skills that you can gain from being a trustee are quite rare to obtain in the workplace. For me, I'm an academic. I think I've been on 6 or 7 trustee boards now, and as many people said about being strategic and not operational, there's my strategic input, my ability to be a trustee and to chair meetings and things like this, that maybe I haven't had that experience as being an academic. I've really enjoyed that. It's really made me more a rounded person. Would anyone like to make a comment around that? A skill that they may have developed, or an experience, or maybe a connection that they would not have got in their workplace? No, Billy?
Yeah, I think there's no doubt I've learned a huge amount from that. I mean, I obviously didn't start being a trustee till the end of my main working career, but I still learned a huge amount. That
and there's
just from being with different kinds of people.
Sure, there's a time commitment here, isn't there? Ruth, you might want to talk about that. But if you had your time again, would you have maybe thought about being a trustee early on in your career, or would you like your employers to support you? Because Royal Bank of Scotland offer 5 days volunteering, and instead of going and dredging the waters of Leaf or whatever good endeavours of volunteering you might do, go and be a trustee and use that. And I've seen many employees of companies get their volunteering time from their employer to say, I'm going to do 2 hours a month on my board and read the papers, 5 or 6 hours. And that will be my volunteering input or the time I would get off from work. So check if your organisation supports volunteering and whether they would support you in being a trustee. I know as an academic, we have it builds up our esteem and reputation, these board positions, if they're relevant to what we're doing in work. So it's really useful.
So Sarah was going to comment there.
Yeah,
Sarah, please.
I'm really struggling with the tech. I'm not used to Zoom.
Yeah.
And I'm having some audio issues. So can you hear me all right?
Perfect.
Okay, cool. So that was something that, can that work? So does that work? So one of the things. So I've worked at a charity. In a year out from the civil service. I'm a civil servant. We get days. That's brilliant. I'd probably prefer to do something like this than having seen boards run from the other side. and I'd probably prefer to do something like this because it sort of chimes with my current job in a strategy team, and I think it'd develop my skills well in that space potentially. And I like the idea of like the opening into different potential roles for the future opportunity from a working point of view. But can you make that, like, so where we're given certain number of days, do you think you could fulfill the role in, I've got caring commitments as well, which is one of my challenges, but like how much time do we need to do this? Like how far do those 3 days go? Or that would be a really good sense to get from this.
Well, it's not like taking off a day and this is my day for my charity.
No.
It doesn't work like that. So, and I'm sure the others will speak to this. So your board meeting might be an hour or 2 hours, and you may need to travel. It might be online. Okay, so if you're on a UK-wide charity, you might have to go to the other end of the country. That's a commitment, stay overnight. Might not be every month, it might be every quarter, maybe, in that sense, and it might be online meetings. They're all different. They might meet in the day, they might meet in night, might meet at the weekends. This is all part of the consideration. But generally, what would you say, Ruth and others? 1 to 2 hours of board time, maybe a month, and then reading your board papers. What are you saying, Ruth?
For the charities I've worked with, a lot more.
Yeah, okay.
And if it's going to be interesting, if you're going to, so one of the really interesting things on charity is either it's something that is part of your day passion and you're just meeting more people who are involved in your day passion, or it's something that you haven't been involved in your day job and you're meeting a whole new world of people. So it's nice to actually embed yourself in that a bit. But no, I would just trying to think of the adverts we put out, but and maybe these are just slightly larger charities. So they've all been charities that are big enough to be registered with the Charity Commission, and they've all had staff, but they have all been, I'd say, about a day and a half a month. Which, but then that might be depending on if it's one that meets at weekends or in the evenings, if it meets online. If it's papers reading, you can do in your own time anyway. And if it has any subcommittees, you might have to add that in, but those might not be part of it. Andrew might have different experiences with his, because I think there are also some charities which can eat up your time if they're small and dependent on the volunteers.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think I've seen instances where a day a month might be sufficient, but I've certainly ended up putting in much more than that. And so I think it's to a degree it's dependent on you and how much you want to get involved in with the people and the problems, or you're just helping an organization have its full board of people with the right combination of skills. I think there are instances where a day a month would be sufficient.
Okay, thanks all, that's really helpful.
Yeah, and I think for mine, Edinburgh can be that I'm a founder and charity trustee of, 3 days I'm doing, I suppose, and more. But I am operational and I should be really strategic. We haven't got any employees. So these are the considerations you may need to have. And there's some things I do, and it's boards and reading papers and contribution where I can, a little less. So it depends. It depends. But these are things you need to consider. These are the things you need to consider. Sarah, also, we're not part of the talk today, but you might want to consider a public appointment, which is not a charity trusteeship. These are generally paid, and the time allocation is pretty set out for that as well. So you might want to consider that.
Sounds frightening by the term.
Yeah, because in Scotland you are appointed by the government. But there's some really great opportunities out there, like the chair of a college or of a university. It's a considerable. It actually is a really considerable role. But a school governor, maybe a lot less time. Okay, so it depends. So investigate these things.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got a few minutes left, so I'm going to come to a close. Now, some of the discussion would have got to lots of detail. My intention was just to encourage people to consider being on the board, understanding where your passions might lie, consider doing a skills audit, and get him thinking about, you can have a conversation with myself. I'm sure Ruth, Andrew, and others may facilitate a conversation. We all want to see other people make a difference on boards. Hopefully, the OR Society obviously is very supportive of that. But I could now spend hours now going into the details of governance, UK governance code, and Nolan principles, and all these things that we really, really should know. And that's what our course does. It's a 4 or 5 day course. I'm not here to sell a course, of course. But governance is common sense. We've heard a lot of common sense in here. And to answer one of the questions earlier, the fish rots at the head. It's just a great book, also a great saying. The fish rots at the head. So from your governance and down. And we don't talk about governance enough. And I just think governance is a really interesting thing to talk about. And obviously very important. So if I close on these, and this is from our visiting professor, Julie Hutchinson, on top 10 top tips to get ready for a charity. I'm just going to run through these, and Ruth, Andrew, and others jump in. Make sure read that there are vacancies. So in Scotland there is Good Moves, and there might be some others in England and Wales. But as you've heard, quite a lot of people are from word of mouth. But you can go and search for trustee positions, and there will be some available, and they will be quite specific in what they're looking for. Have a look at the charity is up to date with its filing on Oscars or the Charity Commission in England and Wales. I'm a bit of a governance geek, so I most certainly would read the charitable purpose. I really love reading charitable purposes and governing documents. I don't think enough of us do. And I love the saying in the third sector and charitable sector around demonstrating and living the purpose, because that's what we certainly do. We must live and demonstrate our purpose. What the charity does, and I give you a list earlier on, that's come from Good Moves, so you could search within Good Moves for different charitable positions. This is what could take up your time, really. You could be on the board, but then join lots of committees as well. So be careful of that. And I'm also including here the OR Society. If you are on the General Council, you are not a trustee. Ruth might want to talk about this. The board are the trustees, but there are lots of people, members of the General Council, and it is a considerable time commitment. And of course, you have to meet in Birmingham and do everything else. Is there money in the bank? Is the charity at risk of running out of money? I already mentioned there's quite a lot of aid charities that are having difficulties at the moment. You can search online. How long have others been on the board? That could be a vital sign of health as well. You're going to get people who might be there for a long time. They're very passionate about that board, but we do need to move on and get new blood as well. Relationships obviously being important. And we've already talked, Sarah, haven't we, about logistics. Where do they meet? And it is a volunteering role, but you should expect to get your expenses paid and expectations. And I'm always minded. Carl George, who taught me in governance course, stay strategic, and not get operational. When you get operational, then you're going to start taking up all your time. If anyone wants to chip in there, and then if you want to find out more, I have not tried to go into governance codes or Nolan principles or anything like that. There is so much that we could do, and I'm happy to do that with others if the OR Society wants to do anything in more detail. But if you want to find out more about governance, obviously there's lots of books that you can read. Have a look at a skills audit. And if you are in Scotland, we have the Get On Board Scotland page, which is a LinkedIn page with about 200 people on it, and they post trustee positions and they support each other. And we've created a Governance Matters Hub, which has got a list of good practice guides, governance codes, charity law, links to different things. And yes, it is specific to a Scottish context, because there is a Scottish context when it comes to governance and legal matters. And we would like to help you. I'm sure I speak for the others as well who have got experience. I just think it's just a wonderful opportunity to make an impact. I know we talk in the OR Society, and we're very proud in the OO Society about making an impact. But I can't think of a better way than doing it by volunteering and being a board member and giving back and using your skills. And what hasn't really come up in our discussion is all those wonderful operational research skills that we might have that could add value to the charity. Obviously, Ruth and others supported the pro bono scheme over the years and set it up. But here, yeah, go and get on boards and have a voice and bring about the change that you wish to see in this world. And I'll leave you with that, unless anybody would like to have a final word. And then Malcolm.
Okay, Miles, thank you. We don't really have any time for any further questions, but if anyone has any.
Yeah, keep writing in the board. I'll follow it later. If you want to put your email address, I'll write back to you. We'll put any post-it notes in there, and I'll write back to you later on today. And I'm really happy to have a chat with anybody. And you may have noticed, I should have said this actually, my academic world is systems thinking and sustainability. It's not governance, it's not law. This is my passion. This is my passion. I got on a board, my granddad was on a board, my mum was on a board, and it's a passion of mine, not my academic subject. So I'm happy to chat to anybody who wants to go and get on the board. I think it's just a wonderful thing to do.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Good. Enjoy your lunch.
Have you given out your contact details, Miles?
Yes, Anthony, I'll put it in the chat. So I am m.weaver@napier.ac.uk. There you go. I'd love to hear from all of you.
Bye. Thank you.
Okay, bye, Ruth.
Yeah.
Thanks, Malcolm, for organising this.